Hi there, and welcome to Cabin Fever Crochet with me, Helene here. Today I'm sitting outside finishing up a project, and I thought to film this portion for anyone who'd like to see how I measure, cut, attach, and trim the fringe, putting it on a crochet project. And I hope this will be especially helpful to those of you who are new to crochet, and to help you avoid, kind of botching it or over cutting, stretching out your yarn, placement, those types of things. So I'm going to go through each simple step with tips that I've discovered and learned along the way that have been helpful for me. So for my measurement, now if you really want to be that precise, you can get a ruler, but I do use a ruler sometimes, and you can, and clear is better, of course, so you can see through it, but just a regular ruler will do. But I don't use that for actually measuring my yarn. I use a book. If it's too thick, then just know that extra width of the book is going to add to the length of your yarn. So it could be a CD or a DVD case, anything that's kind of flat like that. But what I prefer is one that has an edge that is not completely flat. Like, you know how a DVD case has that indented, part on the outside where you open it and has that split in the center. Well, it's similar to, you see how this book is, and what's really nice is when you go to cut the fringe, you can get your scissors right down in there underneath your fringe and just cut across rather than trying to fight with a real flat edge. And then you will also need a really sharp pair of scissors. You don't want to use anything dull because you'll wind up fraying and chopping up your yarn. Okay, and then grab a hook that's 1 to 2 sizes larger, and then if you have, one of those kind of eyes where you can just look at it and can tell that it's straight, without having to measure something, you can kind of eyeball. But if you have a cutting mat, if you're into sewing, quilting, even scrapbooking, something that has grids, because that's going to help you when you go to trim your fringe, then regardless of whatever angle you're using this to do your cutting that's comfortable for you, you have these grids and a straight line, so you can really line that up nicely and get a good clean edge. Alright, so I'm going to sit that out of the way for just a sec. I'm going to grab my book and grab my yarn, what little bit I have, and I am really playing chicken with this project with my yarn, as the saying goes. And then just remember that your knot is going to take up some of that space. Alright, so I just take the yarn and I drape it over, and I just leave it a little bit longer. 1 full turn is going to equal 1 strand. So what I do is I count my spaces wherever I want to put the placement of my fringe, and then I'll decide, to start with anyway, how many strands of fringe that I might want. At first I thought maybe I only wanted 2, because this will double up as you knot it. So if I start with 2 strands, that's going to give me 4. But then after looking at it, I thought, no, I think 3 would be good, and that's going to give me then 6 altogether. So I tried a few to start, and I don't overwind or overpack this because it will cause your strands to be uneven, some shorter, longer than others, and then it makes it really hard if the strands are bunched up when you go to cut. So I keep them evenly spaced, and I don't wind them real tight. You don't want to stretch out your yarn, because when you release it, it's going to bounce back and then be shorter than what you had wanted, perhaps. Okay, so say I want to do 3 strands per, and maybe I'm going to do 5 sections at a time just to start. And I just go however long my book is, or even just only part way if it's a longer book. It's just easier when you get in the center to cut across if you don't have a super long length to have to go, and I just do it a little bit at a time. So say I want 3 strands at a time, which will double to 6. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then I slide my yarn down to meet up with the others. Have them be a little separated, easier to cut. Okay, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2. Sorry, I'm hung up. 3, and so on. Okay. And then when I have this wound all the way, however far I'm comfortable cutting it, then I take my scissors and make sure that you hold down your ends. Okay, and my first cut is going to be below just a little bit, because remember, you've got to make that curve, okay, to about the center of the spine of the book. And then I just put my scissors in that little well and I cut straight down the center like that. All right, that's it. That is how I measure. And then my little pile, take my strands apart, I separate them. And a little extra prep work at the beginning is going to save a lot of time and fiddling and cutting at the end. And then I make myself a little pile, and then I kind of assembly line them is basically what I'm doing. Then I try to even them up as much as possible also. Okay. So if I just take the pile and I pull 3 apart, it's easy that way. And then I just bring the top up to the same height. And then sometimes, say my beginning and my end where I overlap it a little, they're going to be a little longer than the others, so you can trim it. But I always go a little below, just slightly below the other strand, because remember I said they're going to bounce back, and you can always cut a little bit more, but you can't put it back if you've cut it too short. Okay, and then I just bring all my strands out. See, that was the first one. See what I mean? I'm just going to tip that edge a little bit. And then I get my strands ready to go, and I line them all up, and I usually do about 10 or 12 at a time. Bring my project in front of me, and the other side of the work underneath, I push that back, get that out of my way, try to square off my edge a little bit. And what I did here to attach the knots to is where I ended on this mesh stitch, I just did one round with a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, so forth all the way around. And so this chain 1 space right here is where I'm attaching my fringe. And because your chain 1 is not a full stitch, you have less bulk where you attach your knot to, and it causes the knot to be not so big and thick and bulky. And then I found I can also cinch it down tighter, and it's less likely to come undone on itself. If you've done fringe, then you know just what I'm talking about. But this is a thinner, finer yarn, and of course then that's going to cinch down more naturally. You know, another thing about it is it doesn't drag and pull the base of your last stitch of your pattern down either. Some projects don't work out that way, but I always try to, no matter what kind of project I'm doing with fringe, is to not place my fringe in the stitches that have so much bulk to them, and that helps. So here I wanted my placement in the center of these little windows, and that is where I put my chain 1 space to fit right in there. Okay, then I grab my yarn, I fold it in half, and I insert my hook into that space, go up to the center of my fold, bring it through, and then before I knot it, I kind of look to make sure that my strands at the end are even, and if If they're not, you can pull on a little bit one side or the other. Then I grab a little bit taut, not so tight, stretch it out, and then I just wrap around all those strands and bring my yarn all the way through. I could have gone up one more hook size, but this yarn, which is Lion Brand Kobu yarn, is very splitty, and I didn't want to risk getting hung up on that. Okay, so now before I tighten my knot, I want to make sure that the placement is centered where I want it to be. Okay, I have it there. Then I'm going to bring it down a little bit, and before I tighten all the way, I check my ends again. And they're never going to be exactly the same, exactly perfect, and especially because some here they're still curly, some are more straighter. But I will just take some of those shorter strands, and because I still have slack here on my knot, I will just take them and just hold that knot just a little bit. And I don't know if you saw that, those strands at the top, how they just kind of pulled through a little bit and evened them up. And then now I am going to tighten all of them together, and I want to anchor my stitches above just a little bit, hold that down so I'm not stretching them out. And you can slide it up a little. Be careful not to over tighten, and when you tighten, don't pull upward, because then you're tugging and tightening in such a way it's going to cause your knot to be misshapen and want to pull up, and then it'll stick up rather than lay smoothly. Okay, and then because I've pulled these stitches down, I will clamp my thumb and forefinger on either side of it and just give it a gentle tug to straighten that back out. I'll do that again if you'd like to see it actually. Okay, so I take my strands, even them up, insert my hook into my space, go up to the top, the center of the middle of those strands, check again on the bottom, yep, looks good. Wrap those around my hook, or my hook around all the strands, and then pull them through. Just like that. Knot that down a little, double check my strands, looks good, and then tighten them. Okay, now as far as trimming goes, this is where that grid mat comes in handy. Now as far as when I do my fringe, I do prefer being at a table so I can lay it flat in front of me and have an overhead shot and make sure they're even and really see what's going on. But sometimes I might sit on the sofa and just turn slightly sideways and lay that out against the length of the sofa. That works too. I just line up the whole length, and I just visually pick one of the more prominent lines going across. Okay, and if you don't have one of these mats, you can use your ruler for that, and then you would just use the lines and the grids that are on the ruler, or even like right here where it's this line ends, that black line there, and there's a ridge line of this acrylic, this hard plastic, then that's what would be my visual going across. Once you have it lined up, you can use your ruler just to hold that down, and then you can use all these other lines as kind of your visual too, and then you just snip. And you can do this section at a time all the way across. If you are going to leave your fringe in a curly like that, and you like that look, then you can cut this as it is. But if you want to smooth them out, what I do is I cut after I've steamed and smoothed them out, and I just take an iron and I put it on the setting that the yarn calls for. But be careful if you have synthetic blend, and especially something with metallic thread running through it. Be careful with the heat, maybe even go lighter on the heat setting so you don't melt your fiber. And then I just hold it maybe 6 inches or so above, and I move the iron and then mist it. Just make sure you don't mist your other hand or get your working hand into that steam, because it can be really hot and burn you. But the fiber, I find, cools down very quickly. So then as soon as I have steamed it, then I just kind of run my fingers, smooth out the yarn, and maybe finger comb that a little bit so all the strands are independent of each other. And you can do that 1, 2, however many times until you get all the yarn pretty uniform how you like it. And then again, you can either just hold your hand down, you know that your baseline up here is straight, and just go all the way across section at a time. That's all I do. Easy. You know, the fringe, it can be time consuming, and there's a lot on here and you'll see once I finish this. So okay, that's it, my fiber friends. Please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know if you enjoyed this video. Alright, take care everyone. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.